I was going to ask you that. How are these cartels producing so much fentanyl? And actually, I guess for relative an understanding for people, the size and scale of how little is needed, a kilo of fentanyl is enough to kill 500,000 people, which is
Yeah,
insane to me. It's, I mean, the average size of a book, let's say, half
yeah.
a million people, potentially fatal. How are they making something that potent?
Well, they're getting the primary precursor chemicals mostly from China, but some other Asian countries. In China, in particular, the chemical industry is so deregulated that you can turn your garage into something that's producing a precursor. So organized crime in China and Asia is now hooked up with organized crime in Mexico, and bulk quantities now are going directly into Mexico. So they're producing fentanyl 24/7. It's 40 to 50 times stronger than street level heroin. You don't have to worry about the rain or the sun or the soil to nurture it. Um, it is the worst I've ever seen. And in terms of revenue stream for the cartels, they've never had it so good.
Yeah, I live in northwestern Montana, 60 miles from the Canadian border, and have a lot of close friends who work in law enforcement. And there are Narcan boxes
Yeah.
all over their vehicles, and uh, the source for the fentanyl here in northwestern Montana, even though we're 60 miles from the Canadian border, is still up Mexico, up the coast, and then it comes inward through a few different source cities. But it's even as far away from the Mexican border, not as far. I guess we could be 10 miles from the Canadian border, but still up there, the town up there, I'm sure is dealing with the same issues.
Yeah, it really is. And I think the hard part for people to understand is it touches everybody. I think if you were really honest, every community's been hit by it hard. And what is it we're going to do about it? I fought for a long period of time in front of Congress to make the cartels, to designate them as terrorist related organizations, because that's what they are.
What would
And
that change if the U.S. was able to do that, or if we did do that? What would that change in the fight against them?
first of all, it would give us legal authority to do some things that we can't do now. Second of all, we could sanction the companies that are involved in laundering their money much easier than we can now. And it would provide a tremendous amount of money for training and resources to the Mexicans. And that's one of the things that we found so successful in Colombia, is when we really went in a multi-nation effort to train and work alongside with the Colombian police. It made a tremendous difference in their military. And we have not been able to do that in Mexico, uh, probably because the military is so splintered in terms of who you can trust and who you can't trust. There really is no, this is an important thing. And it's funny, but my wife always brings it up. I get calls around spring break from every parent I know who's got a kid that's in school that wants to go to Mexico. And I always say, well, could you just go to Florida, go to the Bahamas, just stay out of there. Um, there really is no local or state police apparatus that's consistent throughout Mexico. And that's really part of the problem. Um, so they rely on the military and they rely on the federal police. With all the inherent issues that they've had over the years, it is a tough one. So I think designating them terrorist related organizations would allow for the influx of our abilities, certainly some surveillance capabilities that we can get now, but they're very difficult and costly, and they have to be diverted from other areas. It would really make a difference. I also think the thing it would do, it would scare the hell out of legitimate Mexican businesses, many of which make millions and millions and are based to some extent along the border and even internally in the United States. It would really make a difference. I don't know, all these politicians. I'm telling you, the last 2 years on the job were the worst for me because I had to deal with Congress. The relationships that some Congress members have with big pharma was a killer, and their lack of understanding of what we're up against is real. I mean, I testified one time in front of the House Judiciary Committee in a closed session because we were going to talk about some classified things. And, uh, you know, I thought these guys, these members of Congress were briefed about everything and nothing was gonna. When we went through the presentation and we showed them some of our operations and what we found, people just couldn't believe that this happens, on our border essentially.
Yeah.
And the violence and brutality, and still nothing is come of it. So it's frustrating for me. It really is.
Well, if people pay attention, it's readily apparent how little sometimes those that are in elected positions of power have an understanding of what it is they're trying to regulate. I remember when they had Mark Zuckerberg come on and they were talking about Facebook, and would be the polite way to put this. Some of the people asking him questions didn't even have a baseline understanding of the technology that he was there to speak about, and yet they were in a position to try to regulate or change policy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a tenuous position to be in when you don't actually know what you're talking about.
It is. And one of the things that I tried to do, and I think we had some success, was I would go to individual congressmen and just talk about their districts. And we would show a chart. You have a street gang operating in your district. We dump their phones. Why are they calling Mexico? And then we would show what was going on the other end of Mexico. And that got their attention because obviously that's their constituents. But in general, they didn't care about the big picture. And then as you're doing these types of operations, and this, bad stuff happens. I used to tell all our young agents, because I'm really an old school guy. You're not going to find another DEA guy like me anymore. They're not there. They're older than me. They brought me through. This is a different agency. But I used to tell our guys, we're risk takers. That's what you're paid to do. And we're going to prepare for hopefully the best, but we're going to be ready for the worst. And bad things happen when good people try to do good things sometimes. And unfortunately, when those things happen, that's all Congress focused on.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because it's kind of a soundbite driven situation now, where good work that's being done around the world, guys risking their life, nobody wants to really hear about. It's disheartening at best.